Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And today I want to talk about the true story behind Van Halen and Guns N' Roses. And Slash has done a number of interviews over the years, and I'm going to show you some in a bit, where he's talked about Van Halen and why he really doesn't like to copy Eddie Van Halen's guitar playing style. So we did an interview with Guns N' Roses' former manager, Doug Goldstein, who also happened to work for David Lee Roth before Guns N' Roses. And if you guys remember, back in 1988, Guns N' Roses played the Monsters of Rock Festival in Donington, England, but also on the bill as a solo artist was David Lee Roth. So during our interview with Doug Goldstein, he talked a bit about the situation that happened where two fans were crushed to death during Guns N' Roses' performance, and how in basically a discussion that Axl Rose had with David Lee Roth left Axl kind of disgusted with Roth's behavior. So according to Goldstein, he said, when we get back to the hotel, David Lee Roth was staying there and he was at the bar, and Axl said, "Can you introduce me to him? I want to talk to him." And Doug said, "Yeah, of course." He said, "Hey man, how are you? Diamond Dave, sit down." Then Axl said, "How do you deal with things like that when they happen?" referring to the two fans who died. And basically David said, "Oh, F it, it's rock and roll," said Goldstein. "It's rock and roll," he said. David Lee Roth's reply made Axl rather dissatisfied, and Axl just said, "Seriously, sorry, I don't want to sit here anymore." He went back to the bedroom and was disgusted with Dave, and I was a little embarrassed to have introduced them to each other, for things said the former manager of the band. Now here's two interviews that Slash gave where he talked about the influence that Van Halen had on him, but he also says that he really didn't want to replicate Eddie Van Halen's guitar playing style because everybody in LA was doing that at the time and he really wanted to stand out.
Watched the Van Halen documentary on Primetime last night.
I didn't even know there was one.
Well, it's kind of, it's okay. It's like one of them kind of VH1-y type things.
Uh-huh.
I think it's...
Does it go back to the very beginning?
At the very beginning, which I didn't know a lot of their beginning. Was you a big fan of Eddie?
Let's see. Let's put it this way. I'm a huge fan of Eddie's, as Eddie as a person and as a player. I loved Van Halen when it first came out, but that style that he did, I've always thought that was something that was just like, that was something that he did and nobody else did it like him.
Yeah.
And then it became a thing that everybody, and so I definitely sort of didn't go down that road when I picked up the guitar. But, at the same time, I'm definitely, sort of influenced by him indirectly just because he's such a great fluid feel player.
Yeah.
And people don't pick up on that part of him as much as they do all the pyrotechnic stuff that he does.
Right.
But, when Van Halen came out, that was as soon as I heard that record, I was like 1978, so I was 13. And I hadn't picked up the guitar yet, but that signaled the end of rock as we knew it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that feeling, like all the whole sort of, that sort of 70s, kind of 60s and 70s thing that just sort of developed and developed and developed. And, sort of punk rock and everything that was happening.
Yeah.
Up to that point, it all sort of changed. And that's when that totally brought on the sort of hair metal thing that happened in Los Angeles for sure.
Yeah.
Now fast forward to 1995, and this is something that I just learned recently, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know, is that Slash's Snake Pit, the first incarnation of the band, actually opened for Van Halen. Now, I'm not sure how many dates they opened, and it seemed like it was kind of a last-minute thing, but here's an interview that Slash did on MTV Brazil from 1995 with Gilby Clarke and Eric Dover, where they talked about opening for Van Halen.
Have you been invited to open to someone else's concert with this Snake Pit?
Van Halen. Yeah. We played with Van Halen. It was okay.
Just okay.
Well, I mean, we were the opening band in a situation where nobody was there. They didn't know we were coming. And we just did it at the last minute.
The audience feared us.
We were sort of like, what the fuck is this? It's like, there's Eric, there's Gilby, that's Slash. Isn't that the guy from Pride and Glory? Wait, that's the other guy from Pride and Glory. So they were very confused, but at the same time we did good shows, and it was fun being in an arena just to go out there and do it. Yeah.
Now in 1995, Eddie Van Halen and Slash actually gave a joint interview, and this was posted by one of the members, Black Star, who's like a MVP when it comes to posting cool Guns N' Roses stuff on the MyGNR forums. So Slash and Eddie Van Halen sat down for the same interview, and they talked a bit about being, how Guns N' Roses is a two-guitar band while Van Halen is a one-guitar band, and whether either of them wanted to be either the sole guitarist in the band or whether Eddie Van Halen wanted to have a second guitarist. But Eddie also had some choice words for Slash in terms of giving him advice. So the interviewer said, Eddie, any advice for Slash regarding lead singers? To which Slash said, I don't want to think about lead singers. To which Eddie said, lead singers are hell. It's true. You got to be a prick to be a lead singer, and that's half the deal. To which the interviewer said, often the creative tension between the guitarist and the singer-lyricist ultimately pulls them apart. To which Eddie said, well, I really don't think friction is what makes something happen. What makes it work is a difference of opinion and ideas. That's part of the collaboration with another human being. But music is not a competitive thing, and that tears up a lot of bands. That's why Roth quit. He thought he was king cheese. Go ahead. I don't want to deal with somebody who's in competition with me, and I want to work with together and make music, you know. Everybody in the band plays a role, and remove any one of them and it won't work. I guess it's a band situation, and we each have a role, and we try to do the right thing. Now, in addition to being part of two huge bands, both guitarists also share another similarity, and that's the fact that Slash and Eddie grew up in really musical kinds of families. Of course, Slash's parents worked in the music business. His mom was a fashion designer. His dad made album covers. And then he also had exposure to a lot of artists like David Bowie, Iggy Pop, and a bunch of others, at a very young age. And even Eddie revealed that his dad was a jazz musician and clarinet and saxophone as well. But he said, my mom wanted us to grow up and be something respectable, and the only way she'd let me play guitar is if I also did piano. Now, the best example or the best instance of these two bands really coming face to face would have happened in 2007. So Van Halen was being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Velvet Revolver, who had just put out their second record, or was about to put out their second record, Libertad, where it was the band that was inducting them into the Hall of Fame, and the entire thing was a complete disaster. Largely due to the fact that Michael Anthony and Sammy Hagar were the only guys who actually showed up, and there was a lot of last minute, going back and forth between David Lee Roth and the Rock Hall, as well as the guys from Velvet Revolver. So instead of Van Halen getting up on stage and playing their songs as part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, like a lot of bands do, Velvet Revolver got on stage and they played a couple Van Halen tunes. And a couple of years after that happened, Sammy Hagar gave an interview where he was critical of what happened. He said for Slash to try and play Eddie Van Halen stuff was wrong. So he gave an interview, and the interviewer asked him, do you understand David Lee Roth's decision not to attend the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony because Velvet Revolver was playing instead of Van Halen? To which he said, I don't think that was it. I know the guys in the band. Dave was calling them up each and every day, driving them crazy to get them to let him sing with them. And that's why it got all screwed up, because Dave wanted to do it his way, and they were only allowed to do 2 songs, and he was trying to do 2 songs with them and not me. Now, Dave was playing his bullshit Dave games, and he effed it all up. And because they told him, no, Sammy's going to sing a song, and then you're going to sing a song along with Velvet Revolver. And Dave said, F you, then I'm not coming. He also talked a bit about Velvet Revolver, and he said, Van Halen wasn't going to be there. He wanted to take over the thing and make Velvet Revolver play the songs he wanted to, and to play David Lee Roth era Van Halen songs and not Sammy songs. He didn't want me to be any part of it, and Dave tried to change that, and they said, no, this is about 2 singers. Sammy sold more records than you did with the band, and it's going to be 1 song with Sammy and 1 song with Dave, and he basically walked out. He also was asked, how do you feel about Velvet Revolver's tribute to Van Halen at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? To which he said, I don't think it was very good, and I really like those guys. It was unfair to take a young band like that had only been together for 1 album, and try to make them try to be Van Halen. I think it was a little bit of a mistake, but it wasn't their fault because they're great, and I like those guys a lot. Basically, they're really good friends. Slash is a great guitar player when he's playing his stuff, but for Slash to try and play Eddie stuff was wrong. They should have had Steve Vai or Joe Satriani or somebody like that play this part. They should have had a legend induct and put together a great bunch of players who are more adapted to Van Halen to do a tribute. Now, fast forward to 2011, 4 years after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and Sammy Hagar put out a statement saying that he could manage Guns N' Roses. So he reckoned that he could help Guns N' Roses become the biggest band in the world, and he had some choice words for his former bandmates too. So Sammy Hagar wants to save Guns N' Roses, the article read from The Guardian. Now that he is finished with Van Halen, the singer says he wishes to help Slash and Axl reunite, proposing that he could become the band's manager. He said Guns N' Roses could be the biggest band in the world if they really wanted to. Hagar declared in an interview with the blog Attention Deficit Delirium, now that the group has been nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012, it's the perfect opportunity for the classic lineup to patch things up. He said the amount of money they could make if they got all back together, make a great record, and tour the world would probably be as much as the Rolling Stones get. The problem, Hagar insists, is that Slash and Rose just don't get along, and if it were about the money, the group would have reconciled long ago. Axl goes out for a lot less money with his version of Guns N' Roses, and Slash goes out for a lot less money with Velvet Revolver or by himself, but they could do it. I would manage them. I'd be their manager and make sure they got the right deal from all the promoters. So if you guys want to see Velvet Revolver's tribute to Van Halen at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you can go check it out. It is, I do agree with Sammy Hagar. Their cover was awful, and it wasn't because the instrumental was bad. It was just that Scott Weiland's voice just didn't suit the songs that they were playing. I think they played Ain't Talking About Love, and I can't remember the other song they played, but it was really one of the worst performances, and a lot of the comments tend to agree with that sentiment when you guys go check it out on YouTube. So thanks for watching, guys. Hit the like button, and be sure to subscribe, and go check us out at gnrcentral.com for the latest Guns N' Roses news. Take care.
Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and you're watching GNR Central. Yeah!